All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a truly fascinating, completely unfiltered, and highly comedic political manifesto. It's essentially a giant thought experiment, one that blends pretty crude humor with some surprisingly sharp social commentary. We're going to examine the core social, economic, and political pillars of this project to understand exactly what the architect of this movement calls the Squiggly Revolution. So to kick things off, I have a question for you. What on earth connects a $1 prime minister salary with a flagship export product called the Canadian pocket beaver? I know, it sounds totally unhinged, but these seemingly unrelated, totally absurd concepts actually form the structural foundation of a 20-year project designed to reshape an entire nation. Let's find out how that actually works. To understand the revolution, we really have to look at the revolutionary. Meet David. He describes himself as a retired autistic senior. The story goes that he was just sitting around staring at a news feed covering the, and this is his phrasing, LGBT+++ blah 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 acronym when he suddenly identified a major branding problem. He realized this ever-growing list was just getting way too long for his self-described good kind of memory loss to handle. So naturally, he just self-appointed himself as president of Pride Canada and proposed a massive, radical rebrand. His overarching solution? The term squiggly. His logic here is pretty simple. You are either straight or you are squiggly. Because a squiggle is completely unique to the person drawing it. It goes any way it wants, left, right, up, down. It doesn't even have to mean anything specific. The only rule is that it simply cannot be straight. And crucially, it's a shape that literally anyone, regardless of their artistic ability, can easily say and draw. And this extreme pragmatism extends right down to his new nation's merchandise. I mean, why spend money buying dozens of expensive, constantly updated flags when you can just make one yourself? The Squiggly movement actively encourages citizens to stop wasting their cash. Just take a white bed sheet, or, an old hockey jersey, get a big Jiffy marker, and just throw a squiggle on it. It is DIY political branding at its absolute finest. Which brings us to Section 1, the anti-slur shield. Moving over in the social policy, the core logic of this shield relies heavily on the psychology of conflict de-escalation. Think about it. Traditional slurs are aggressive. They're designed to trigger hostility, and they're highly offensive. But the word squiggle? Not only does this word encompass everyone under one giant umbrella, but it is inherently, phonetically, just fun to say. The manifesto theorizes that it is physically and psychologically impossible to sound intimidating while aggressively shouting the word squiggle. David literally challenges anyone to try and say squiggly angrily. By adopting a term that is so naturally disarming and ridiculous, targeted aggression in public spaces, like, say, picking a fight in a local bar, would be entirely neutralized. The word itself literally acts as a social shield. Moving right along to Section 2, Anatomy and Symbols. So, David further expands this social policy into the classroom with what he calls his School of Comedy lecture series, focusing specifically on physical composition. Here, he introduces the highly scientific and obviously completely satirical loose anatomy theory. He contrasts the rigid posture of straight men, whom he describes as stiff and not real flexible, with the required physical flexibility of squiggly men, who are animated and, well, loose. With complete deadpan delivery, he argues that this animated looseness makes perfect biological sense. According to David's notoriously unfiltered logic, your body has to be pretty loose if you can take one up the butt. It's a prime example of how the manifesto uses absurd, crude comedy to bridge social gaps and create a unified, humorous cultural identity. And to streamline this new culture, he proposes the international bar symbol. This would be a secret hand sign that you can just flash at a stranger across the room to instantly indicate if you are straight or squiggly. The stated goal here? To avoid being trapped in what he calls the world's worst 51st date simulation, completely saving you the time and embarrassment of staring way too long at pretty girls you have absolutely no chance with. Okay, next up is the economic engine in Section 3, the pocket beaver economy. Because every revolution needs funding, right? Operating under his self-appointed title as the president of Squiggly Canada, David proudly announces a massive, unprecedented fundraising victory of $20 million. And this economic boom wasn't fueled by your standard political donations, oh no. It was driven entirely by massive condom sales, which, he very astutely points out, saved the government an absolute fortune in HIV meds. The fiscal allocation here is actually shockingly balanced. He splits the treasury directly down the middle. $10 million goes toward funding the biggest, brightest parade the world has ever seen.
The other $10 million is used to establish a foundation where every single dollar goes directly to aiding the homeless on the streets of Canada. And again, all of this is funded entirely by safe sex profits. These profits were spearheaded by the global export of Canadian adult toys, specifically their flagship product, the Canadian Pocket Beaver, which David notes single-handedly generated a good $2.5 million of that total. He also planned to support the economy with the maple syrup dildo, which was just another wild fundraising product idea designed purely to ensure everyone has a good time while keeping those parades fully funded.
And finally, we arrive at Part 4, the CPOC Master Plan.
This brings us to the ultimate end game, where David merges his Squiggly principles into a 20-year political project through the Comedy Party of Canada, or CPOC, basically securing the majority vote of everyone who likes to laugh and everyone who likes to, well, have a good time. The platform uses national standards where scale matters, like ID and criminal justice, but provincially, he implements the "but" signatures policy. Traditional handshakes are gone. Instead of asking where someone is from, you both turn around and show each other your ass, which has the flag of your province printed right on it. The only strict rules for this: you must be 18, and absolutely no hairy ass cracks. You either shave it or you wear a white thong. Simple as that.
But to pull off a cultural shift this massive, you need a leader who is willing to go the distance and assert total dominance. And the true cornerstone of David's political ambition involves a highly radical approach to executive compensation.
As Prime Minister of Squiggly Canada, David proposes taking a grand total salary of just $1 per year.
And this right here is where the satire bites the hardest. This $1 salary isn't pitched to the voters as some noble, selfless sacrifice for the good of the people. As his quote spells out perfectly, it is strictly designed as the ultimate comedic and political power move, engineered exclusively to emasculate rival politicians and make every other prime minister look bad by comparison.
Which leaves us with an incredibly cinematic final thought to ponder today. Picture David's ultimate victory. His final act as Prime Minister is releasing all the government's UFO secrets because, as he says, his generation is ready. He returns to his park bench, happily feeding a pizza crust to Gimpy the Crow, watching a sea of bouncing, flag-tattooed asses walking down the street in a perfect Groundhog Day of absolute freedom. Could a platform built entirely on crude comedy, absurdity, and squiggles accidentally outline a more honest political reality? I leave you to consider if filtering society's complex, bureaucratic messes through the unfiltered lens of a comedian might just be the best way to highlight the real ridiculousness of our modern systems. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.